Well, hey guys, how's it going? Will Robinson here from Robinson's Auto, toolsandtime.com. Welcome back. Today in the shop we have a Volkswagen Jetta TDI. I'll be demonstrating how to go about replacing the rear struts. It's a pretty simple, straightforward task on this one. However, I figured I'd demonstrate it for you. His main complaint was the car wasn't handling quite the way it used to. It wasn't recovering. The suspension felt lousy. After taking it for a ride, I verified his complaints and did some basic troubleshooting. Just looking at the tires can sometimes give you a hindsight on what's going on without even putting it in the air and jacking it up. What I noticed is when I ran my fingers across the tread, I could feel choppiness. It could be a bad strut, a bad spring, a bad shock. Depending on what kind of suspension you might have, a lot of times it's a bad strut or a bad shock. So looking a little deeper in the front, we also have some upper strut mounts that are bad, but we'll cover that in a future video. So today we're going to cover the rear struts, so let's get started. Okay, the first thing you want to do is jack the whole rear of the vehicle up in the air and place them on the jack stands. As you can see, I got a jack stand under each side, so follow your recommended jacking procedures for your vehicle and place it on a jack stand. On this one, it uses a straight axle. It's not independent suspension, so you're going to want to do one side at a time. That way when you release the one side, the other strut holds the rear axle up for you. And I'll demonstrate this more as we go. Okay, prior to removing the wheel, what I noticed on the other side is that the wheel bearing was a little loose. So just take and inspect everything, and as you can see and hear, we have some play in that wheel bearing. So I'll make a follow-up video on how to inspect those wheel bearings, repack them. I got to do an inspection on the brakes on this one anyhow, so I'll make a follow-up video for that. Let's remove the hubcap. Pretty much everything for this job is going to be a 17mm. These tires are in poor shape. We're going to be putting all new tires on this as well. Okay, so I'll just give you a little once over. There's your spring and your strut. You got one lower through bolt. However, we're going to start at the top. When you come into the rear of the vehicle, on this one there's a pin on each side of the back seat. You want to take and release that pin and fold your back seat down. Then when you come over here, right under this back cover, right underneath this boot, is your upper strut mount. So pretty much what you're going to need is a 17mm wrench. And we're going to take and remove this retaining nut first. Like I mentioned before, it's 17mm. Okay, and then you got this disc style washer. As you can see, the disc side faces up. I'm just going to place everything down here in order. Okay, once that upper one's removed, you can see there's one more retaining nut. We're going to take and remove that. It's a 17mm as well. Not sure if you can get it with the regular wrench. Really can't. If you had an offset wrench, that would probably work as well. However, I'm going to use a 17mm socket and ratchet. You're going to have to push up on this cover a little bit. One thing I noticed, it's really tight. If you get this one clip to pop, then you can pull up on this cover a little higher and give yourself a little more room. Spin those nuts off. I've got them pretty much out. Remember, it's going to drop a little bit because it's still hooked up to the near the spindle on the rear axle. Okay, let's remove this retaining nut the rest of the way. Okay. Should be able to take and remove this whole upper bushing. As you can see. I'm going to set it down in the same order as you remove it. One more washer down in here. Right here. This goes up in the bushing in the opposite direction. So I'll actually take and set it together just like so. Okay, we're ready to drop it out the bottom. Now we're going to come under the vehicle. If you take notice right here in the back, you got this plastic cover. You can take and pop that off like so. And then you got your retaining bolt, 17mm. Pretty much goes through. I'm not sure if you can see in that hole. There's the nut. Okay, and like I mentioned before, it's pretty much 17mm for the entire job. Place a wrench. Okay, got that nut. Alrighty. Okay, now that we have that lower retaining bolt removed, I'm going to take and press down on the axle to give me enough room to pop the strut. I'm going to go towards the front of the vehicle with it and down, and then we'll be able to tilt it back and out. Should have just enough room to remove it, just like so. Alright guys, now that we have it out of the vehicle, there's a couple things I'd like to demonstrate before we go any further. Remember up top, we initially took out this rubber upper mount. This lower rubber strut top was up inside, and there's a taper. I'll give you a quick shot of that now. Okay guys, if you come down here under the center wheel well, if you look up there, that's the taper that I was talking about. If you see how that works, it kind of comes in, sandwiches it. This goes onto this bushing like so, gets pushed up in. You have your other pieces that I showed you earlier. This one under like so. This one came down. And then it pretty much compressed this, and then once that was all tight, then you had your top one with a locking nut. And I'll show you that all again once we put it together. However, if you purchase this as a complete setup, it usually comes with everything you see here new. It comes with a new strut, a new spring, all your new bushings, the spacers, the washers. This is like a little bumper in here, a little extra absorber, a new spring. However, I couldn't get one in a timely manner, and he needed the vehicle back. But what I was able to do was purchase the strut, this bumper, both upper bushings, and then all new spacers and washers. I was able to purchase them separately, so it'll give us a good demonstration on if you buy your parts separately. There is a couple things that won't be getting changed, and that would be the spring. So in all reality, you do save by purchasing the whole complete assembly. However, there was no sagging going on with this vehicle, so I believe the spring's in good shape. So we're going to be reusing the spring. Now in this strut assembly, you don't need a strut compressor. You don't need to compress this spring in order to disassemble this assembly. But that is rare, so you got to use extreme caution no matter what, because you have a loaded spring, and bad things can happen, guys. There's been fatal accidents where people took these struts apart, not in this style, but ones that are compressed, that you're supposed to use strut compressors, And if you remove it without a strut compressor, this thing can come up, cut your throat, do some severe damage wherever it may hit you. So if you have one that requires a strut compressor, you got to use the right tools, guys. However, on this model, the strut is plenty long enough to uncollapse the spring. But what I do, I always wear safety glasses anyways. Get yourself an impact. You can do it with a socket and ratchet as well. We're just going to run it out a little bit, just so I can show you. And I always do it down to the side. That way if something flies apart, it's going to go away from me instead of up in my face. So, but as you can see, we still have some threads holding that down, but I just wanted to demonstrate how there's not much pressure there at all. So you can pop these ones apart, and as you can see, the spring's totally relaxed and you still have some of your struts sticking out the top. And if you see me, I just took the nut off. This is a spacer. Remove your spacer. Then you got your strut top. You got this grommet. If you take notice, it's spun in, spun around, and went into that groove. There should have been a flat washer here. I didn't see one. So that's an indication that this has been replaced before. Unless it, I would say there's a good chance someone forgot to put that in. I'm almost certain there should be a flat washer here, or a spacer, a small spacer. I'll look it up real quick, just double check. However, you got these insulators. They're gonna have to be popped out. Okay, sometimes these bumpers can be a real pain to get out, so get yourself some penetrating oil, spray it down in there just to help it along a little bit. Oop. As you can see, this one is shot, but we got a replacement. Now you take and remove your spring. One thing I want to demonstrate here, this is the old strut. As you can see, it's going down real easy and it's not coming back up. The strut is totally shot. And that confirms my suspicions. As you can see, it has it's not helping at all to absorb the shock. So let me show you on the new one and compare the difference. Okay, here's the new shock or strut, whatever you want to call it. I would say it's more like a shock, but they do consider it a strut because it's a compressed assembly. So if you look at this, they usually come pushed down like so with a band around it. To remove that band, I usually flip it the other way, push it down, pop the band off. But as you can see, this one, it's returning on its own. It's almost like a screen door. Now it has that shock absorber on there. It's to take that shock so the door doesn't slam. And just like your suspension uses the shock so you're not slamming up and down and bouncing around like a rabbit. But as you can see, it's a lot harder to push down and it comes right back up. So there you go. Let's install a new one. Okay, I just got back from the parts store. Hopefully you guys can see me well. Got the new strut, as you've seen before. However, we just picked up this bottom part's a dust cover. For some reason, I thought this had to cover this whole thing up. However, this is the way it goes. You got the dust cover down here, and then the bumper up top. We got the new bushings, upper and lower. Came with a new spacer, and all the new accessories for that. So let's get started. We'll start with putting the lower bracket on the strut. That goes down there like so. Then this is the dust cover. That goes on there like so. Now we can take and install the spring. Now these can be a little tough going on. Sometimes I put a little oil around there. However, we'll give it a shot. It's got to go down over this little lip, so it's not taking up any space. just like so. Okay, now there's a little spacer. This is what was missing on the other one, and I looked it up. Pretty much that goes on there just like so. And what that does is when you tighten everything down, this has something to press against and lock it in place instead of just pushing on that collapsed ring. So it's time for this rubber grommet. Goes around the upper spring. I don't know if you can see that well, but there's a lip. What I actually do, I get the spring started and then I turn it in. And it goes in there just like so. Take and install the upper strut top. Got the spacer. Sometimes I like to use the old nuts because they're a little beefier than the new ones. However, these were replaced once before, so it has the cheaper style nuts on it anyhow. So we'll just use all new. Get that started. Pretty much you can run this down by hand. You'll know if you're not all the way down. I'm just doing this as an example. That was closer than I thought. Okay, just for an example, I know I'm not all the way tight, but I just want to give a demonstration. If you're not sure, and you got that ran down and it feels like it's tight, just give it a couple bounces, and you know you're not far enough. Right there, you can see it, the whole assembly straightens out and it squares up on the top. Now you know you're all the way, and we're good. Reinstall this lower bushing, just like so. Now if you wanted to, you can put this cup on now. That way you don't have to bother with it once it's up. However, if you remember looking back, pretty much what this does, this is the upper bushing. This inner cup goes in like so. And this outer one, this upper one, goes in just like that. And then you tighten it down with the top nut. And it'll probably come close to collapsing, but it keeps it from collapsing completely because of these two lips. So maybe I'll take and throw this on right away. We're ready to install it. Try not to get in your way. Remember, this has to go in the reverse way that you took it out, so towards the front of the vehicle, down in between the bracket and the axle. And you're going to go back up, find your hole. I feel the bushing is seated, so I'm going to try to push this axle down. Just like so. We're just going to stick our bolt through, keep us in place. And now we can proceed to putting the top together. Okay guys, as you can see, I utilized that rubber cap to give us a little more space so I could get a little more light in there for you. But as you can see, the strut's up, it's seated in the bottom, and we got that spacer. Remember, it faces up. And we got our new strut bushing. This is the upper one, so these rib pieces face down, just like so. And we got our new upper top washer. That's going to go down, just like so. Put the nut on it. Try to keep it as square as possible. Looks pretty good. Let's keep running that down. It's never easy doing one hand. You'll know when you're tight because this is a rubber mount. It's pretty solid, so it'd be real hard to spin. So right now we're just compressing the two halves together. Pretty much this is going to collapse all the way down until the two spacers touch. And two washers, if you notice, I had that the protruding ridges on each side. Pretty much we're just tightening them down until they collapse and touch each other. Then you have your rubber mount. And you can tell when they're touching because it tightens up right away. And you can torque it to specs as well. I'll look that up for you. But I can usually tell when we're good because it's only around 15 foot-pounds if I remember correctly. And it's not very much. So if you feel like you're starting to turn the strut, that's more than enough. Okay, now as you can see, that upper spacer slash washer is really sunken in there now. That's because they both came together, and if you remember how they kept that space in the middle once they touched, that's where that upper bushing collapsed against each other, and now we're that's our rubber mount, and the bottom one came up and we're drawn in tight. So now I got the new cup style washer. Remember, the cup side, the dish side faces down, so almost like if it's going to hold water, you're going to want it upwards. So that's on, and this is pretty much a lock nut in case that bushing ever fails. This will kind of be like the last resort. And we're going to take and just tighten that down. You'll know when they touch. And you just make it, you know, decent, nice and tight. I'll give you the torque specs. But you can tell when they're locked together, and then just snug it a little more after that. You don't have to kill it. It's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so that's pretty much for the top. All back together. We take and reinstall this cover like so. Remove the duct tape I put there for you guys. I'll try to push this clip back in place. Just like so. Put everything back the way you found it. Okay, that's the top. Okay, we're looking good. Take it back underneath. What we're going to do now, you notice I have a jack underneath. What I'd like to do, I'll get this nut started. Like so. It's a lock nut, so you're only going to be able to put it on so far with your fingers. However, what I like to do is place a jack underneath it and try to put some load on that spring, on that strut assembly. That way it kind of resembles the ride height. I don't want to take it too high because I won't be able to tighten it up with the gas tank. So I just want to get it close. You just want to put a little pressure on that and get it close, because once you tighten this up, it kind of binds that bushing. So you don't want to do it when it's fully relaxed. You want to get it somewhere near the ride height. So what I do, I jack it up a little bit, get it loaded somewhere where I think it's close enough. You know, it's not super critical on this one. However, it does help with the life of the bushings. Just take and tighten it up. This goes somewhere around 52 foot-pounds. You can take and torque it to specs. cover, I could tell that's good enough right there. Just gonna release the jack. Okay, now we just got to reinstall this plastic cover. It's not super critical. However, that's all she wrote. That wasn't too bad of a task. Just repeat the same process on the other side and you should be good for a while. I'm going to hold off for now on reinstalling the tire because I need to check the rear brakes for inspection. In addition, I'm going to inspect the wheel bearings, repack them and adjust them, and then send it on its way. Okay, there you go guys. Hope you enjoyed. Hope that helps. And like always, please subscribe if you'd like to see more. I always look forward to reading your feedback, so please leave a comment down below. Thumbs up if you like this video. Till next time guys, stay tuned. Thanks for watching.